Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers beat the Washington Wizards 111-88 for their largest margin of victory this season. It was just the Lakers' second 20-point win this season, first time winning by 23. They reached the midway point of the 2024-25 season at 23-18. They are sixth in the West, on pace to win 46 games, and we have a lot to touch on. We're going to talk about the Lakers at the midway point. We're going to talk about Dorian Finney-Smith. We're going to talk about Jonas Valanciunas, and then we're going to get into the Q&A portion and answer all of your questions. Before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. A quick update for tomorrow. It's going to be episode 81 of Buha's Block. I'm going to be doing mid-season grades with Dan Wojcicki of the LA Times. I'm going to be blindly presenting my mid-season grades to him, each player on the roster that has played. So not going to be grading Vando, Christian Wood, and I think that's about it. Everyone else is getting a grade. Also going to be grading JJ Redick, and then I'm going to present him with a grade, and he is going to respond. And then we're going to have a little bit of a back and forth, obviously focusing more on LeBron, AD, Austin, Rui, Max, etc. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow morning. As for tonight's game, so as I mentioned, this was LA's biggest win of the season from a margin of victory perspective. And it made sense because the Washington Wizards are 6-36. They are effectively the worst team in the NBA. They've had 2 double-digit losing streaks, one of 15, and they're currently on an 11-game losing streak after tonight's loss. They play a lot of unserious basketball, and was talking to someone from the Wizards during the game, and they said, we're young and we can't shoot, and that's a bad combination. And you saw that tonight. Although, I mean, they can't shoot. Never mind. So they shot under 36% overall and under 26% on threes. But that was a nice, to get into the overarching theme or takeaway rather of the game. Like, I just thought it was a nice bounce back win for the Lakers. There were some parts of this game, obviously, where things were a bit shaky. And I think given the opponent and given the way that the Lakers have been playing and talking about trying to get back in a certain rhythm and on the same page and being connected, like, you would like to see this game be a little easier than it was. It was a 12-point game going into the fourth quarter. Washington had several points where it was competitive and relatively close. They technically led by 4 at one point. So I still think, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. So that's like, I want to be clear here that it was a good win considering the opponent and considering how much they won by, again, their easiest win of the season technically. And this was 2 days after the group said nothing easy. What was, there's no easy nights for them. They had a pretty easy night. I still think that there's room for improvement. I thought defensively, it got better as the game went on, but early on that there were some breakdowns. I still think the starting lineup did have a good plus minus tonight, but I think longer term they continue to need to look at that group and if there's a better way to divvy it up and just sort of structure the starting group and then structure the bench. But all things considered, again, like, LeBron, 21, 10, and 13, his 9th triple-double of the season, which is the second most in the NBA. AD had one of his best games in a while, 29, 16, and 4 blocks. Austin really struggled shooting the ball 4 for 15, but got going late in the game as the Lakers were distancing themselves, finished with 16 and 8, just 2 turnovers. DFS had 16 points, I believe his most as a Laker off the bench. And I'll touch on him and the minutes restriction and whatnot. And then that was it from the double figure perspective. Rui was just there at 9 points, 5 rebounds, but LA shot 48%, didn't shoot the ball well from 3, just 32%, but they took care of the ball, just 10 turnovers. They won the rebounding battle by 4. They won the points in the paint battle by 16. They won the transition battle by 3. So they did enough to get this win. And again, I don't want to nitpick too much. I think there were some concerning stretches in this game, considering the opponent, but overall, they got the 23-point win. They extended the lead and put it away in the fourth quarter when they really needed to. And I think there were a lot of encouraging things, particularly some of the stretches of defense. Like they did hold Washington to 88 points. They did hold them to under 36% shooting. I thought DFS had some really impressive moments defensively. I thought Max had some good moments. AD obviously was a beast inside. So again, I think this is a nice bounce back win for the Lakers. And it puts them in a solid place, I guess, overall at the midway point of the season. Stat of the night for me is going to be that 16 points from DFS. I think him being tied for third on the team in scoring is not something you necessarily expect. And he's been kind of up and down with the scoring production, but I think he's a guy who is so reliant on others creating for him that when he is involved and he's scoring, and obviously he had a really good shooting night, 6 for 8, 4 for 6 on threes. So he had a good shooting night. But when a guy like him is going off, it is because of the way that the Lakers are moving the ball offensively, the way their driving kick game is operating, the way they're finding him in transition. And this, to me, was arguably the most comfortable he has looked offensively as a Laker. And it makes sense. It was his 8th game as a Laker. It was a bad team. So those two things combined, more reps, more experience with the group. He's now been back for a couple games since having his son, and they're playing the Wizards, one of the worst defenses I've ever seen. And JJ kind of had a I wouldn't say a wild reference, but he did reference that like they have poor low man help Washington, which is already kind of something that JJ doesn't typically say about an opponent. And he said it actually kind of best with the Lakers when their low man would be there because they were so used to that player not being there. So Washington's defense is a mess, but I think DFS's points and the shot quality, the shot attempts were emblematic of the way that the Lakers operated offensively. I mean, you could look at the 30 assists on 43 field goals and just 10 turnovers as well, as just LA humming at a certain pace and verve offensively. Again, it's the Wizards, so I don't want to over embellish how well they played, because again, I think if this is different team, different circumstances, this is a much closer game in my opinion, but credit is due. And I think Dorian Finney-Smith had a really good game. And again, I think that was signifying the way that LA was moving the ball offensively. The ball was popping and the offense looked better than it had. I think they had like 4 straight games with under 102 points or 102 or under. And they finally broke through it with 111 tonight. So a better, again, bounce back performance overall. Takeaway number 1 for me is going to be LA at the midway point of the season. So they are 23-18, 6th in the Western Conference. They are on pace to win 46 games, which would be 1 fewer than last season when they won 47. So under Darvin Ham, they won 43 and then 47, were the 7th seed in both seasons. As things stand, the Lakers are 13th in offensive rating. They are 22nd in defensive rating, and they are 21st in net rating. So a bottom 10 team in terms of net rating, and there are only 3 teams in the West worse than them. So they continue to be the 4th worst team in the West in terms of net rating. Defensively, there are only 4 teams worse than them in the West. So really the defensive end has been the big concern on the whole for the season. Like, we have seen this group go through these stretches where they're good offensively, bad defensively, good defensively, bad offensively. They can't seem to quite put it together on both sides of the ball. And a big theme tonight, because I asked LeBron about it, I asked JJ about it, of like, what's your assessment? I like, especially when it's like a clear quarter mark of the season, midway point of the season, 3/4 mark of the season, end of the season, like just asking for their assessment and leaving it open-ended to see what they're going to say. And I thought that JJ in particular gave a very insightful answer about like, when this group is connected and when they are playing the way they want to be playing on both sides of the ball, he thinks they're really good, and he thinks they're trending in the right direction, and guys are embracing their roles, and that he like he continues to harp on the Orlando and Atlanta losses. He said that Scott Brooks brought it up today in their pregame meeting, that as a coaching staff, like those are two games that they wish they could have back, and they felt like if they were 25-16, they'd be exactly where they wanted to be at this point in the season. He's also referenced the San Antonio game, switching the most recent one, switching 1 through 5 as a game plan that he wishes he could have had back, and wishes, especially when Charles Bassey was on the floor and Wemby was off, that they still weren't going 1 through 5 switching, and that Bassey really killed them with offensive rebounds, second chance points in that second half. So I think he had a pretty comprehensive answer as to where things stand, and that he's like, look, for as up and down as we've been, we're still the number 6 seed in the West. We're a couple wins away from being the number 4 seed. It wins that we felt like we lost. Like we haven't really had those games on the flip side. I don't know if I quite agree with that. He might have said that actually last game, if against the Clippers, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know if I'd agree with that. I'm sure we could go through the Lakers schedule and find some games they've won that maybe that they shouldn't have. They certainly have had a lot of close wins, and that's, I think, shown by this 23-point win against the Wizards being their best win of the season from a margin of victory perspective. But the Lakers right now, and so I'm looking on NBA.com at the season-long numbers, but if we pull up since the DFS trade, they're 15th in offense. So the offense has been slightly worse than the season-long mark. They are 20th in defense. So the defense has been actually slightly better. And from a net rating perspective, they're 17th. So the net rating has been better. So the defense since the DFS trade, now that we're 10 games removed, has been better. And that was the big reason why they made the DFS trade. They wanted to be a team that is better balanced on both sides of the floor, add another 3D wing, replace a scorer and playmaker, and hope that shift ends up making you a better defense and a better team. Technically, from a net rating perspective and a defensive perspective, they've been better. Offensively, they've been slightly worse. The issue is you don't want to be 15th in offense and 20th in defense. Like, that's still not good enough. And they're going to have to figure out, like, I talked about it during the last stream after the Clippers loss, of like, what's our identity and what can we be consistent in? Because right now, I think it's cliche, but the Lakers' consistency has been their inconsistency. And outside of LeBron, AD, and now more recently Austin kind of giving you a certain level of production, the rest of the group, I think, has been pretty inconsistent. And even those guys have been inconsistent in some of these recent losses to good teams. But I think in general, like, this group, you don't know what you're quite getting night to night in terms of defensive execution and effort and energy, boxing out, rotating, but then offensively, shot making, decision making, effort, cutting, screening, like all that stuff has just been so inconsistent night to night. So I do think, actually, like, in a way, like the Lakers have really overachieved. And I just wrote this at The Athletic in my story today about them needing to pick a path, because entering today, the Lakers were projected to win 45 games this season based on their record. And per Cleaning the Glass, they actually, their net differential was that of a team that on a 36-win pace. So that's a 9-win difference there in terms of pace. And I think the Lakers have actually been overachieving relative to their performance on the court. They have a lot of close wins and a lot of blowout losses. And a lot of those close wins are against bad teams, and a lot of those blowout losses are against good teams. So all things considered, for them to be 5 games above 500, for them to be a 6 seed at this point in the season, and still going through this transition period post DFS trade, I think it's a slight win for them. Now, there's no moral victories here. And ultimately, for this group to get to where they claim to want to get to, it's got to come down to what they do over the next 2.5 weeks on the trade market. And also, I think changing the starting lineup, changing the rotation a bit, and empowering some of their better lineup combinations and running a more organized offense. I think being more selective with the switching. And that's a long list of things to do, like make trades, change the starting lineup, change the rotation, change the offense, change the defense. It's a lot. I don't think the Lakers are, frankly, in a great place. I don't even know if I'd say they're in a good place, but I think all things considered, compared to the record versus the performance, you always want to outwin your performance. And so far they've done that. So I guess like that's kind of a mini win. But bigger picture, of course, like this group needs to make another trade or two on the market if they want to seriously compete. And I also think there needs to be some changes to the offense, the defense, and the rotation. And again, that's basically everything. So I do think a lot needs to change over the second half of the season. But considering the performance and them being a bottom 10 team in net rating and point differential, and them actually being 5 games above 500, 6th in the West, I think you take that. You just hope that they can make the adjustments, including the trades, over the second half of the season. Second takeaway for me is Dorian Finney-Smith, and it's going to be a combination of, I thought he played really well tonight, and I did touch on that just a minute ago, but also this minutes restriction. So pregame, JJ says, just kind of drops it out of the blue that Dorian Finney-Smith has been dealing with an ankle injury, and that he's been on a minutes restriction, and that his minutes have been capped at 20 minutes, or he's been on a restriction at up to 20 minutes. And the interesting thing with it is, I'm going to pull it up right now. Dorian has played 20 or more minutes in every single game. So it's not like he's been playing. So his minute totals as a Laker are 20, 24, 23, 26, 28, 20, 22, and 22 again tonight. So he's only played 20 or more minutes. So I'm not quite sure where this 20-minute number came, because he's played 20 minutes in exactly 2 games. And then the rest of the other 6, he's played 22 or more minutes. So I was kind of confused by that. I'd also asked JJ about this specific thing because he dealt with an ankle injury in Brooklyn that then led to a calf issue. And I asked JJ about the calf, and I guess he technically could deny that it's a calf thing, but I just asked, like, is he still dealing with the calf? Is he banged up at all? Like, are there any restrictions with it? And he said no, the calf was fine. So technically he did not say the ankle was fine, but it felt like that would have been the time to say that he's dealing with an ankle thing though, and he's on a minutes restriction, because it has been weird to see like the Lakers go out and trade 3 second-round picks. They trade their 6th man to go get Dorian Finney-Smith, and then the last 3 games he's played 20, 22, and 22 minutes, and that just doesn't really pass the smell test, especially when looking at it, like he had the Atlanta game, the Houston game, and the Dallas game, I thought in a row was progressively playing better, and the minutes were rising. It went 23, then 26, then 28. And then all of a sudden the San Antonio game, I mean, that one got away. And JJ said he's tried to save. Part of the reason why Dorian has played fewer minutes in first halves and even through the first 3 quarters is he likes closing with Dorian. So he wants to kind of save 4 to 5 minutes for Dorian in the fourth quarter at a minimum. So that's why I would assume the San Antonio one, like that one snowballed early in the fourth, and then Dorian, there was no need to play him. But the Clippers game, I guess kind of similar, but they were only 22 there. And then tonight, Washington, they blow them out. So it ends up being 22. But JJ said he wants to ramp it up by like 4 to 5 minutes, get him in that like 24, 25 minute range, and then eventually get him up to 29, 30 minutes per game. But as I mentioned, Dorian tonight, 16 points, 6 of 8 shooting, 4 of 6 from 3, had a couple of rebounds, 1 offensive rebound, just +3, which he's been leading the team in plus minus since he's arrived. Tonight was a bit of an off night from his plus minus, but overall, like I thought defensively, he was pretty good, continues to look more comfortable within the Lakers scheme, a bit more disruptive. He had like one play where he was kind of guarding like three guys at once and blew up the action. And I just think like I've talked about it. I know the numbers aren't always going to wow you, but this isn't just a winning player. And again, it doesn't always show up in the box score, but especially when he's making shots and then JJ's leash with him is a little bit longer. Like I think he could be a really productive player within this rotation and a really important piece because of his versatility and the multi-positional defense. So I still think this needs to trend in the way of him replacing Rui in the starting lineup. I think it makes more sense for the starters. I think it also makes more sense for the bench rotation. And now we're seeing with the new rotation that JJ is using, there's these stretches where one, he is not staggering Austin and LeBron enough, which I think he needs to address. But he's having these stretches where it's like Gabe, Max, DFS, and AD and Jackson. I think Rui would be better in those minutes as kind of the second scorer to AD and finding ways to get Rui, because in most lineups, Rui is going to be at best the number 3, if not really the number 4, and even the number 5, depending on who the other 4 guys are. But if you can find more lineups to get Rui as like the number 2 and just get him going a little bit and get him some more touches, get him some easier baskets, I think that could get a better version of Rui. And then also, I just like DFS and Max next to Austin, LeBron, and AD, and really just complementing those 3 as two-way wings who do the dirty work. They do all the little things. They're taking on the 2 best perimeter scorers. They're cutting, getting out in transition, screening, all that stuff, moving well without the ball. I think that they just complement those 3 better than Rui, better than Gabe, better than whoever else that you could put out there. So I think that's like a obvious fix. I've been saying that for almost 2 weeks now, and feel like has it happened? And we'll see if it ultimately happens. Maybe they're waiting for a trade or for Vando to potentially come back. One note with Vando, we're supposed to be getting an update tomorrow. We'll see what that update is. Lakers are supposed to be practicing, so maybe he ends up practicing and finally scrimmaging 5-on-5, and then potentially ends up returning soon. I'm not quite sure, but we'll know more tomorrow. So that's the final thing on DFS. Like I just think he needs to play more. He's been playing better. I would say 4 of his last 6 games have been pretty solid, and ultimately I think he needs to be the starter. And then final thing before we get into the Q&A is a Jonas Valanciunas scouting report. And it's been a minute since I've done one of these. Earlier in the season, I did one on Jeremy Grant. That was the game he went like 1 for 12 or whatever against the Lakers. And then I did one on Walker Kessler. And so the Lakers haven't played Bruce Brown yet. Cam Johnson didn't play in the game against the Nets. And I would say that's kind of it for like the main guys that have been attached to them or linked to them. Robert Williams, I don't think they've played against him yet. I think he was a DNP CD. So really like a lot of the main guys that they've been tied to have not played against them. But so the first look at Jonas Valanciunas this season against the Lakers, at least, and overall played 19 minutes. He's the direct backup to Alex Sarr, which, by the way, I really like Alex Sarr. I thought he had 5 blocks tonight. It just had some emphatic blocks. I think I really like his potential long term. But Valanciunas came off the bench, 19 minutes, 8 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 2 fouls, 4 for 6 shooting, and 1 offensive rebound. So scouting report on Valanciunas continues to basically be what it is, which is offensively, he's really good at getting those deep seals, and he scored on Jackson a couple times, but he is good, strong, big, physical, can get deep post position, hit you with that quick hook shot, also has that little fadeaway and a soft touch out to like 12, 14 feet. Mid-range, longer jumper hasn't been quite the same, but he's got that offensively, and I think obviously, in terms of his rebounding, had a quiet first shift. I think he had like one rebound or not even a rebound in that first shift. And then the second shift was where he got like 6 or 7 of them. But really physical, can move guys. Like I think overall probably outplayed Jackson. And I do think he is better than Jackson. But so big, physical, tough player. The problem is the other side of the floor. I only mentioned the offense and the rebounding because defensively he was barbecue chicken against the Lakers. And the highlight of the game was LeBron catching a lob and Edward dunking it on Valanciunas' head top. So, I mean, you don't want to like overreact and say like the guy can't protect the rim because of that, but he lost Jackson several times. I want to say like 1 or 2 of Jackson's lobs were directly because of Valanciunas. There was also another time where he misread the play. Jackson cut the other way, and he just doesn't have the foot speed to react. So I do think like tonight what was a nice example of you saw some of the scoring and the rebounding and the way that could fit with the Lakers bench and potentially help them. At the same time, he has cinder blocks on his feet defensively and really struggled on that end of the floor in terms of pick and roll coverages, coming up in a higher drop or even up to touch, and then also retreating and preventing the lob and preventing a guy from cutting from the dunker spot. Like that's just not really in his wheelhouse defensively. So I think it's basically what I've been saying and kind of why I've been against it. Like there are things to like about Jonas Valanciunas. I would also argue like I don't know when he's getting these post-ups because like when are other Lakers getting post-ups outside of AD and LeBron? It's primarily like even Rui, who has a bit of a bag in the post that we've seen over the 2 previous seasons, has not really been getting post-ups. Like JJ has been very intentional about it's AD or it's LeBron. No one else is really posting up. So I just don't know like when those possessions would come, and maybe some of it's like early offense, just getting a deep seal, certain matchup, like second units can be more exploited. So that could have some value, but I see it offensively and I see it with the rebounding, and those are 2 important things. I just think defensively, it's like he just can't really move his feet. And now you can counter that by saying like compared to Jackson, compared to Christian Wood, who's not even available, compared to some of the limit, like they're clearly not trusting Koloko with a rotation role. Trey Jemison, Valanciunas is obviously better than him, although there are some similarities there. Like you could, like I think he's better than any current second center they have. I'm not going to deny that. I just think the potential cost of it, if it is both seconds and that's like the Lakers' one move, I don't think that moves the needle enough. I would rather go get a Bruce Brown, Alonzo Ball, someone like that, who I think is actually going to be a bigger part of the rotation and more change the way the Lakers play rather than like a backup big who's going to play 14, 18 minutes a night. Because that's what I really think Valanciunas, like the way he played tonight, that dude is playing 8 to 10 minutes in the playoffs. And that could be fine. That could just be what the Lakers need. But he's also getting cooked defensively. And we didn't really see him in the post because he was often going against Jackson, and Jackson's not going to. Lakers had a recent post up for Jackson, which Ed did hilariously, but they're not really posting Jackson Hayes. So we didn't really see what he looks like, post defense against AD. But yeah, I think his defense, in my opinion, offsets the offensive value. And ultimately, I think if the Lakers are making one more move potentially, I think they're better suited going and getting different players or doing like a bigger trade where another big is like, maybe if it's part of a 3-team trade or something like that, that's a different story. But I think Valanciunas is the primary move. I don't personally agree with that. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. I see we got a couple super chats. Dotun, first one, any update on Demon Vando early January turning into February? Yeah, so we were told before tonight's pregame press conference that there was going to be an update on Vando tomorrow and not to ask about it. Like we could ask about it technically, but it was just going to waste the question that the update would be coming tomorrow. So Lakers again are set to practice tomorrow, and we are theoretically going to get an update on him, potentially talk to him. So that's something to monitor. And if so, maybe I'll do a practice report. I haven't done one of those in a while, but I am doing an episode, Buha's block early in the morning. So it sounds like he's potentially returning soon and could be as soon as this week, but I again, he was cleared in the Denver series. He never ended up playing. There had been buzz about him returning at the end of the regular season, didn't end up happening. So I do want to temper like expectations until I see Vando checking into the game. That's when I'm going to officially believe that he's like, you know, what if he gets cleared and then he has a pregame setback? Like there's always that possibility. So I want to see him checking into the game to know that he's officially back, but it does sound like it could be happening soon. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. Have you read what Kranjis has said about the organized offense answer and specifically the 2.2 possession number JJ came up with? Yeah, so I didn't get to ask about that pregame. Kobe Price of the Southern California News Group and now 3-time guest of the show was able to ask about it. And yeah, I mean, clearly, I do think there's a little bit of a disconnect there in terms of how JJ views it and how Kranjis is tracking it. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do it. But I do think based on like Kranjis is like he was saying 37 freelance or random offensive possessions night. That's a much different number than 2.2. So I don't know if JJ is just like there can be an element here of just JJ trying to protect the offensive coordinator or the offensive structure or whatever. I lean more on the Kranjis side on like I think just visually watching the team, rewatching games, like you can see the offense is not humming the way that it was earlier in the season. I do think some of that has to do with like opponents. Like I think they've been playing better teams, better defenses lately, and they have had some rough offensive stretches in general in terms of shot making, turnovers, etc. Like I think any time the Lakers turn the ball over a lot, I feel like that's just one of those things that like really saps their defense and just saps kind of their overall performance. Like their high turnover games, they rarely tend to win those games, in part to quote JJ and LeBron, because the margin for error is basically non-existent. So I think it's something that needs to get better. I would, maybe it's worth a follow up with JJ at practice tomorrow and trying to think of a way to not like, because I mentioned this last stream, like you don't want to try to like act like you're getting one up on the coach or that you know the answer that they don't, like, and you're smarter than them or something like that. So that's never how I try to come at things. So I think there's a sensible way to ask this. I haven't quite thought about what the follow-up would be, but it is something that I think is very relevant. And I've asked about the switching and that's been something I've kind of pushed him on a little bit. So I think this could be kind of the next schematic thing that I continue to push and ask about. But yeah, I don't know. I think as Craig just was saying, like maybe their version of what they consider a freelance pick and roll, a freelance post up is different than the way that he's tracking it. But claiming 2.2 and then Craig just saying 37, that's too big of a gap to be talking about the same thing, right? So I'm not quite sure what that 2.2 was in reference to. He never clarified it, and probably would have been a good thing to follow up on. L.A. Jovan. WTF is the front office doing? At least Phoenix is going for it. Jeannie's posting about some Netflix show based on her. This is a clown show. Rough day in Lakerland outside of the game, right? So you have my report, which I mean, if you've been following me and this channel and this show, like I have been basically saying everything that I said on the report that just came out at The Athletic. I basically said it in yesterday's Buha's block, but this was a written version, a little bit more in-depth version of basically the Lakers' three paths of one is go all in, likely use both, but depending on who they get, you could technically, you kind of argue it could be one pick, but really probably both picks on the table. Young guys, like go all in, get the best roster possible. Path 2 is a smaller, either stand pat or do a smaller move. Path 3 is tear it all down, trade LeBron and AD. That's the least likely by far. I don't see them doing that. I see it between 1 and 2, but in talking to rival scouts and front office personnel, the sense around the league right now is that the Lakers are trending toward either doing nothing or doing a smaller move where they put the 2 second-round picks on the table and maybe Rui or Gabe or something and see what they can get for that price. And it's more of a half measure, more of them not going all in. Now, that is intel from outside the team. From inside the team, they have maintained that they are exploring avenues to improve and they are pursuing the best improvements and upgrades possible. And they want to see what Vando looks like and want to assess the group over the next 2.5 weeks going into the deadline. So we'll see which side is the side that ultimately wins out. But I mean, I agree. I think they should go for it. I've been saying that since the summer. I've really been saying it since before the 2024 trade deadline. I think, again, I talked about this on the last stream, but they've had multiple trade cycles to go for it. And I do think the DFS trade was a step in the right direction and a shrewd move, but it needed to be the precursor to another move, and ideally a move of equal, if not more value. And we'll see if that ultimately ends up happening. And these things are fluid as always. So I'm going to continue to report on it and give you guys the most up-to-date information that I have. But as you referenced, Phoenix today trades a 2031 first-round pick for 3 first-round picks with Utah. They are arming themselves to go after Jimmy Butler and try and do some type of Bradley Beal plus multiple first-round picks for Jimmy Butler. So Phoenix is saying, if we're going down swinging. We're trading all the picks. We're trading all the assets. We are trying to bring Jimmy Butler here, win a championship with Devin Booker, Jimmy Butler, and Kevin Durant. So you got to respect their approach there. And yeah, so we'll see, right? Like there's still plenty of time left, but based on the current names projected on the market, there aren't a lot of guys who command that first round pick. So that's kind of another thing here is it's not like the sexiest buyer's market per se, right? That there are some values and there are always values to be had on the trade market, but it's either some bigger salary guys that it's tough for the Lakers to match now that they traded D'Lo, or it's some guys who, the Lakers kind of differ on how they view the value for those players. So like they would love a Walker Kessler. Would they love a Walker Kessler at 2 first-round picks? I don't think so. I think that would be them. Like I'd be pretty shocked if they paid that price for him, for example. So we'll see. This is a very fluid situation, and I'm sure I will get more trade questions coming up. Dotun, you think JJ knows who Kranjus is by any chance? I'm sure it's crossed his radar. I know there are people within the organization who know who Kranjus is. So I don't think JJ is as online as he used to be. So that's one thing where maybe he doesn't know. But I think JJ is aware of some of the online discourse, because I think especially with the San Antonio switching 1 through 5 and us asking about it, I felt we asked like very, frankly, like tame sort of safe questions, and he was a bit defensive about it. And anytime the switching has been brought up, he points out that like 1 through 5 switching is San Antonio and like these other handful of games, and the rest of the time we're switching 1 through 4. And he's not necessarily wrong. I do think they've switched a little bit 1 through 5 a little bit more than he said, but that's like one thing he's been defensive of. And I feel like that is more of an online, like Lakers Twitter, Lakers Reddit discourse thing than it is like us pressing him in the media about, because a lot, there are a lot of reporters who don't even really know X's and O's necessarily. And they're more so asking just like, it seems like you guys are switching more tonight. Like, how, what was the strategy behind that or something like that? Not even saying like 1 through 5 or this or that. So I think him being that defensive about that specific thing was more of an online discourse thing that he probably got feedback on or was aware of. But yeah, I mean, if he doesn't know who Kranjus is, he probably will soon at some point. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. Does the Phoenix trade make a Utah trade more or less likely in your opinion? I hadn't really thought of it from the Lakers perspective, like this specific part of Lakers Utah. I might say a little less, just because they just did it basically a 3-for-1 swap in first round picks, and they technically got the more valuable first round pick among the four, but they did lose like a net 2 first round picks. So in theory, I think they would value getting back, whether it's for Walker Kessler or Kessler and Sexton, getting back like 2 first round picks and not dropping that asking price. So my quick read as I'm reading your question is maybe like slightly less likely, but I ultimately don't think it makes like a big difference. I think it just comes down to what's the final asking price for Walker Kessler, how high are the Lakers willing to go, and then based on those 2 things, that will determine if it happens or not. Paul Parinello, the Lakers beat the worst team in the league. Yes, but they beat them by 23. And I don't, for a group like, to be honest, the Lakers don't have a lot of blowout wins. I mentioned it. This was their biggest margin of victory of the season, second 20-point win of the season. The previous one was the Toronto win at home. I want to say back in November, like mid-November. So this has not been a team that like a lot has come easy for. And even this game was not as easy as the final score indicated, but it's cliche, but I say it all the time. Like you play the schedule in front of you. Washington was on the schedule. Lakers won by 23. They took care of business. So I don't like, you don't want to overreact. And I'm not saying this was one of their best games of the season. I'm not saying this was like they've had, I don't know where I would rank this in terms of like certainly among like best wins, I would have it lower just because of the opponent. But yeah, you stay even keeled. You don't overreact in either direction. But considering how much they've struggled against lottery teams in like they're 12-1 against lottery teams or teams above, below 500. But a lot of those games have been close, and some of those have been like down to the wire wins against those teams. Go back to Brooklyn. Like Brooklyn's better than Washington. Are they that much better than Washington? I like D'Lo is better than anyone on Washington, but I was Poole and Kuzma, like they're just playing on, like this is a very unserious team. I do like Koulibaly. I do like Sarr. I do like George, and Corey Kispert I think should be on a serious team, but this is more of a way station right now than a real basketball team. Bang Charlie, a win is a win. I agree. IS, thank you for the super chat. Of these 3, rank the best situation-wise. Ooh, this is a fun one. Phoenix, Golden State, LA. So are we talking this season? One follow-up for you would just be, are we talking this season, or are we talking like next 3 seasons, or are we talking both? You want me to give you like 2 different answers? If we're ranking this season, I still think I would go Lakers, Suns, Warriors. I think the Warriors are screwed because of the injuries and who specifically is injured. So right now they're 20. Both teams are 21 and 21. So they are both 2.5 games behind the Lakers. I would say currently, as things currently stand, because one hurdle here with the whole Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal situation is Bradley Beal has a no trade clause. So Bradley Beal has some say in this, and it's going to be up to him ultimately. Like, does he want to go to Miami? Is there a third team? Is Miami going to reroute him somewhere else? So there are, like, the Bradley Beal factor is a factor here. I would say as things currently stand, I would go LA, Phoenix, Golden State. Longer term, I would go Golden State, LA, Phoenix. And if we're saying they make the Jimmy Butler trade, though, I would go Phoenix, LA, Golden State. I think in the short term, Golden State is last in either direction. I think in general, for as inconsistent as the Lakers have been, Phoenix has had their own injuries and struggles, particularly on the defensive end. Golden State has had their injuries and their inconsistency. Reber, I just thought it was one of the funniest headlines I've seen to an NBA story of is Dennis Schroeder secretly a sleeper agent for the Lakers and like tanking the Warriors season. Like that to me was just pure insanity. But again, I'll give you three different answers. Presently, LA, Phoenix, Golden State. If they do the Jimmy Butler trade, Phoenix, LA, Golden State. Longer term, looking like down the road based on their assets and some of the young talent and whatnot, kind of projecting out multiple years, I would go Golden State, LA, Phoenix. Like Phoenix is going to be in a tough spot, especially if they do this trade. Like they basically have no assets moving forward. Now they do have three, like, I don't know where I would rank Jimmy off the top of my head. Is he still a top? I don't think he's still a top 20 guy. I don't think he's still probably top 25. Now, playoff Jimmy is a different beast than regular season Jimmy, so that's something to consider. He is much better than Bradley Beal, though, so it's an upgrade for sure. It's a no-brainer. But yeah, that's my ranking for now, post-Jimmy trade potentially, and then for the future. F. Pendleton, I think Bruce and Jonas are the most likely moves LAL will make. AR, Christie, LBJ, DFS, AD, Bruce, Connect, Vando, Valanciunas. I like it. I said with Jonas, if it's the primary move in terms of like the second move, I don't like that. If you go get Bruce Brown, like if you do a 3-team trade with Washington and Toronto and you go get Bruce Brown and Valanciunas and it's Rui and Gabe, I'm more open to that. It's more swapping Bruce for Rui and Gabe for Jonas. And now you could potentially even do, depending on the draft capital in that trade, you could do a smaller trade, dump Christian Wood to a team that has some flexibility, and then go sign someone else. If you feel like you need another guard, you can't like. Or one thing that I haven't really talked about on here, but one benefit, because I know there's the whole conversation about the Lakers and spending and stuff. And so they make the DFS trade, they save some money, and people are kind of, ribbing them about it. But one actual like real benefit of them doing the DFS trade and saving $3 million is now they can go out and waive a Christian Wood, a Cam Reddish, someone on the back end of their roster, and go sign someone. And at that prorated amount, they're still going to remain under the second apron. Now, they will eat that money and they will have to pay that player the prorated amount for the rest of the season. So that would require the Lakers to be willing to eat the money of waiving a player and having that against their cap sheet. But because of the point of the season and really the point of the season where they'd likely be signing someone, they would be able to waive someone, sign someone. And I mean, they could do the thing where you sign someone to like two 10 days. And then for the third 10 day, you have to make a decision. Are you signing them for the rest of the season, or are you going to sign someone else to a 10 day? But so that kind of lowers the ultimate cost that you spend. But one of the benefits of the DFS trade was saving that $3 million, getting more room under the second apron, and now being able to waive someone if they can't dump them and then go sign a free agent. So there are still limitations with them on the buyout market. They can't sign a buyout player who is making more than the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. So that would be Bruce Brown if he gets waived by Toronto or bought out. That also would be Ben Simmons if he gets waived or bought out by the Nets. So those are two names that could be buyout market guys, but the Lakers could not sign them because of the first apron restrictions. So if this ultimately ends up being it, I like it. I don't know if it's enough, but I do think it puts them in a more serious spot. Ken Carter, thank you for the super chat. Would you rather do Taco Tuesday or horse race with Joker? So are you saying Taco Tuesday with LeBron or horse race with Joker? I assume you're saying with LeBron. If it's just a random Taco Tuesday, I think this is a pretty easy one for me. I think I would do Taco Tuesday with LeBron because I'm not a big horse racing guy. That despite the Serbian heritage, my dad was not a horse racing guy. I'm not a horse racing guy. It's just not something I'm into. So, I mean, it would be really cool to spend the afternoon with Jokic and pick his brain and just connect with him. But I think between the two, Taco Tuesday with LeBron sounds more fun. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. Could LA make a move similar to Phoenix with the picks? Well, Phoenix has, I believe, 3 picks now. I don't know if they have a 4th off the top of my head, but they now have, I mean, the reason they made this was to add more first round picks to make it a more competitive offer for Jimmy. So in that sense, it's a much easier salary match because they have that giant Bradley Beal expiring. Like that's one thing that I talked about comparing the Lakers at this deadline to the 2023 deadline. Was at the 2023 deadline, they had all this dead money that they did not want on their books with Russ, Pat Bev, and Kendrick Nunn. And they were able to trade all those guys. And based on how poorly those guys were playing, it was almost like no matter what they traded them for, it was going to be a boost. And having that large outgoing salary helps you match in trades. So I don't think they can make a similar move. Technically, yes. I just think Phoenix is a better position because of the Beal contract, which is right there close to Jimmy. And because now they have 3 first round picks and not 2 like the Lakers. Now I would push back and say, I think the Lakers picks are more valuable than the 2 best Phoenix picks, but Phoenix 3 is greater than 2. And I think it's a little bit of an easier fit now or cleaner kind of trade process for Phoenix. Now, could the Lakers do Levine, Ingram, Fox? Yes, I think Ingram and Fox are a little bit more realistic in terms of salary matching because those guys are mid 30s. Levine is still in that low 40s. But could they get to Jimmy's number? Technically, yes. But I think if it's really a bidding war between them and Phoenix, like Phoenix is going to beat them because they have 3 picks. Pieter K. Jonas looked kind of bad. Yeah, I mean, to me, Jonas looked exactly as I think he looks. Like he can score on like weaker, smaller big men. Like Jackson Hayes is a little bit taller than him, but he's obviously, it's like a 40, 50 pound difference there between those two. So he can score on those types of guys. If he gets deep post position, he's got the hook shot. He's got the little fadeaway. He's got a solid post game, but I don't think the Lakers run that many post ups. I don't think, even if they brought him in, I don't think they're running that much offense for him. He is a good rebounder, but then defensively, I just think it's minced meat out there. Like he's getting attacked and can't really show and recover well, can't really prevent the lob. And just in terms of rotating and moving his feet, it's just, so maybe in certain matchups, he could be useful and next to AD, I guess like the defensive ask obviously is much less. And you could kind of position one of those 2 guys at the rim and have one of those guys on the perimeter. And obviously, you probably prefer. I mean, it's tough. You prefer AD in both positions over Valanciunas, but maybe if you have Valanciunas as the pick and roll guy, you still have AD lurking. But I think it's again, if it's the main move, if it's like if they do 2 trades or a 3-team trade and they get him, I'm okay with it. If it's like the main move, I think that's a mistake. Michael D, will we see mustache Buha anytime in 2025? Well, I'm kind of growing it out a little bit. This is me not shaving for like 2 days. Do you guys want to see mustache Buha? Like if this is a thing that the people want, I will do it for the people. But we're already at 54 minutes. This has flown by. I am BC says no. But with the dots, that's like a little offensive, BC. Nico Mendoza, yes. Bob the Builder, no. Michael D says yes. Okay, we're at 2-2. Someone's got to be the tiebreaker here. Paul says yes. So people are leaning into the mustache. I mean, I don't want to disappoint. I cannot grow a great mustache, but you guys have kind of seen my facial hair. Like it's blessing and a curse. I don't have to shave that often, and the maintenance is better for my skin. The downside is this. Okay. I'm going to go about 10 more minutes. For real this time, because I am getting up early to record with Dan, and I got to do a lot of prep for my grades. I take my grades very seriously. I'm sure you guys will agree with all of them and have no complaints. Jesse Alfred Manrique, would it cost Bruce Brown a first? I will say, and I partly know this because of playing fantasy basketball. Bruce Brown has been playing better. He's on my fantasy basketball team now. I picked him up, dropped him, picked him up again. He had a solid game tonight. And as I said, in digging into the film, I think he fits with what the Lakers want from an off-ball player. The biggest concern has been the shot, and then obviously also him coming off of knee surgery. And I think he's actually looked pretty explosive and pretty much back to Bruce Brown in Denver and Indiana. But the shot is a notable concern. I'm not going to downplay that. I also think there's a size element of if you go from Rui, who's 6'8", to Bruce Brown, who's 6'4", you are getting smaller. Now, I would argue that Bruce Brown plays bigger than his size, and there are matchups in games where he's going to play bigger than Rui. And we've seen Rui not always play up to his size in certain matchups. So I think he's trending in the right direction. And the problem with that direction is it could ultimately get to a point where the asking price is a first round pick, depending on how the next couple of weeks go. But for now, my read on it is I think he's going to cost 2 to 3 second round picks. Maybe he plays his way into first round territory, but I think it's probably 2 or 3 seconds. Britton, do you like Sharp or Jonas more? I would honestly say whoever costs less. I mean, Sharp did not have a good showing in LA either, but apparently he was dealing with something, and that he's tended to have better games and play better in general. I kind of lean Sharp depending on the price, but again, to me, it ultimately comes down to whoever's cheaper. Denny third with the best answer. If the wife approves, I got to get it cleared with her. Schmidt K also says, ask the wifey. ASD 123. The show's really fun when we win. I mean, it's true. Like it's more fun because if they lose, then we're all like last show was like we were having some serious conversations about post Russell Westbrook trade and like what the Lakers should do and going through the different eras and the different seasons, and like it's a much better, getting a lot of yeses. J Note, do it, bruh, with the crying emoji. So I guess people may buzz cut with the mustache. Now I'm gonna get in trouble with my wife. She does not like I used to have a buzz cut when in high school, and she doesn't like that. So I might get one of the two. Jake from State Farm, what record into the trade deadline do the Lakers need to force the front office to make a trade? And I'm kind of paraphrasing what you said. So I'm going to pull up the schedule. The Lakers, so they're 41 games in. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more games before the trade deadline. They play Golden State here in LA on the 6th. So 7 more games, and they're not. So they got Boston at Golden State. They're banged up. At Charlotte, at Philly. They're always banged up depending on the night. Although I think Embiid's supposed to be back for that game, of course, because that's the Lakers' luck with injuries or opponent injuries. Washington, New York, Clippers. Those are the 7s at Clippers. So I would say Boston, New York, and the Clippers are going to be three at New York are going to be three really tough games that I would probably pencil in the Lakers losing. I think Charlotte and Washington should be locks for wins. And then Golden State, given their current state, I think the Lakers should win that one. And then Philly, it kind of depends on who's available. If it's like Embiid, George, and Maxey, obviously that's going to be a pretty tough game. They've been pretty good when healthy, but we don't quite know about Philly's health right now. So I think a realistic, if I had to predict, like I think the Lakers are probably going to go 3-4 or 4-3 in this 7-game stretch. I think if you go 5-2 and maybe you beat New York or the Clippers, that applies some pressure. At that point, you're 28-20, you're 8 games above 500. I would assume they'd be the 4 or 5 seed at that point. So I think to be honest, I think it's more about seeding than record. I would say they probably have to maintain the top 6 seeding and potentially even jump up to 4 or 5 to really put some pressure on. If they drop to 7-8, I think that kind of is further confirmation that they don't necessarily need to invest. So I would say I actually look at it more seeding than record. Bob the Builder, is KCP still a possibility? Technically, yes, but I don't think Orlando's trading him. Like they're starting to get healthier. They've been able to ultimately like stay above water without Paolo and Franz for as long as they were out. And I don't think that's going to happen. L.A. Jovan, are you still doing the roundtable with Woike, Kobe, and McTen? Let's put some pressure on Dan tomorrow in the comments. I will ask him about it, but I want to. I mean, it's about to be 2/3 of the group on the roundtable. I think McTen will only do it if it's the 4 of us, and that's a way to kind of get it cleared. Mayu, why can't we get Levine? I mean, the Lakers technically can. It's one thing that I've gotten in these conversations is if Vando's in the trade, the Lakers probably have to attach a 1st-round pick for a team to take on Vando's contract because there are 3 more years and it is not viewed as a positive contract right now. So to get there, you have to do, I mean, Rui, Gabe, and Vando gets you to about 39, which still isn't even there. You're going to have to put in 1 to 2 more contracts of minimum guys, unless you're putting in Max or you're putting in Austin. But I don't think the Lakers want to do that. And that does drastically change what your roster looks like if you put one of those guys in. So let's just say it's like JHS and Christian Wood or something like that. And so that's 5 guys going to Chicago for Zach LaVine. And whatever the cost is for Zach LaVine, and there's been unclear kind of intel as to, is it seconds? Is it a first? Is it, like I'm not quite sure. Let's just say it's somewhere in that range. Aside from that, you have to attach a 1st-round pick for Chicago or for another team to take on Jared Vanderbilt's contract. So that is not ideal. And if you could somehow get LaVine for 2 seconds with that package, you're now having to add in a 1st to get him. And that just, I think, would complicate things from the Lakers side. So I think depending on the price, it's certainly possible. If it was 2 seconds, I think they would consider it. But I think the potential, like if it's a 1st and a 1st for Vando, I think that's too much for LaVine, both in terms of depth, but also in terms of assets. Mr. TD, love Bruce Brown, only if he's cheap. That's kind of where I'm at too. Young Lido, Lonzo is better at everything Bruce Brown does. I think Bruce Brown is a better cutter and off-ball mover. I think Lonzo's a better ball handler. I think Lonzo's a better passer. I think Lonzo's actually probably the better shooter, right? Like looking at the totality of their careers. I try not to base shooting just on the season. I try to look at like the bigger picture, multi-year trends, but would say Lonzo's the better shooter. And I mean, I really, the big thing with Lonzo is just the injury history. And at this point, like, can you trust he's going to stay healthy? But if you told me Lonzo's going to stay healthy, I would rather have him than Bruce Brown. Michael D says, let's get the likes up. Thank you. Let's get those likes up, please, if you're not liked it yet. Pieter K, Bruce /Jakob Jovan. I like I mean, it does get you in a similar place. It's actually almost identical to Zach LaVine. It's pretty close, but you are getting 2 players instead of 1. You're getting 2 guys who can defend instead of a guy who cannot defend. I think both guys fit better next to the Lakers' 3 top players, scorers, than Zach LaVine does. And now you do face the same thing where you almost certainly have to put Vando in this trade. And then it comes up to like, what's the price for Bruce? And like, I think Bruce and Jakob probably is going to be a first. And then you potentially have to put in the second first. And that, I don't know if the Lakers would love doing that for like those 2 names in particular. So this is where it gets a little tricky of like what I would do or what you guys would do is not necessarily what the team would do. And that's where it's going to be interesting to see what they do over the next 2 weeks. Kane Carter, what's a dark horse player you think the Lakers can get that no one's talking about? I'd say Ayo Dosunmu. I really like Ayo. He's been a popular name on here. I think it would probably be a first round pick, to be honest. Now, depending on, I always forget his contract. Let's see. He's not making, yeah, he's making 7. So if you could do, I mean, you could do two minimum. You still can't take back more if you're the Lakers. So that's one limiting factor here. But for the Bulls, let's see if there's a minimum guy. Like I'm trying to see if the Lakers could do Gabe plus an asset for Ayo. Bulls have, I mean, Torrey Craig, THT. It's a little tricky to match. You could do Jovan. I mean, you could do, I guess, like Jovan Carter and Ayo, and then Jovan Carter is under contract for 1 more year, 6.8. He's making 6.5 this season. You could do Jovan Carter and Ayo, and then from the Lakers side, do like Gabe and Christian, and then 2 seconds or a first. And I get like, I do like him. I think that's, I think he does help you in the now. In the future, I think it's more probably a future move. But dark horse player, to answer your question, it's a good question. I'm not sure because I've pretty much reported on like the names I've heard. Like there's no one really I've been sitting on. I mean, I would actually say like the dark horse might just be the Lakers like smoke screening. They're not doing a big move and then doing a big move. Like I guess De'Aaron Fox could be a dark horse, depending on what happens with like Sacramento's playing much better, but it doesn't seem like he's still happy there. Like I think that's a domino that needs to be figured out before the deadline. So De'Aaron Fox might be the answer. I'm trying to think of like Toronto. I mean, maybe like a Davion Mitchell type could be a dark horse if they trade Gabe for someone else and then they feel like they need another guard. But I feel like most of the names that I've heard, I've reported on, and then people have reported on other names, and like I think those are kind of the names. So, yeah. Peter, I see I missed your super chat, but I did answer it in the chat. So, Mayu says we need a Keon Ellis. I do like Keon Ellis. I would like him, depending on the price. Ash, yo, what up? All right, I'm going to wrap in 2. I'll do 2 more questions. Bloodhound, why would the Bulls trade Ayo? I mean, I don't think he's seriously available to be clear, but I do know that the fan base is big on him. Tally Khalifa, Late Night Gang. Yeah, I gotta continue the branding every time. I sometimes it's so late that I'm I'm not thinking it as clearly as I should be. But shout out to the Late Night Gang. I appreciate you all. Kane Carter, hey Jovan, I was thinking maybe Rui, Gabe, Wood in a first for AO and Zoe, then add a third team like Detroit who's willing to take bad deals. That could be a possibility. Now, you do have to send Detroit an asset, and the way that 3-team trades work is all 3 teams have to be touching each other. And what I mean by that is all 3 teams, like it's like a triangle, and each side has to be sending something to each other. So if the Lakers are sending Detroit, like you got like each side has to be doing some type of transaction. So if the Lakers are rerouting a Rui or a Gabe to Detroit, Detroit is going to want an asset. And now you're giving 2 sets of assets to Chicago and Detroit versus just 1 set of assets to Chicago or a different team. So that's one thing to keep in mind when talking about a 3-team trade. But I like that. I do like that. You probably have to give up a second to Detroit at least. I mean, just probably 1 second, but yeah. Bloodhound, remember to go upvote 461 in here and less than 80 likes. Let's get those likes into the triple digits. I appreciate it. Nathan, Kessler odds. I said on Hoops Tonight with Jason that I think I put the Kessler odds around 25%. And I know that sounds low, but I don't think there's like any player currently that's above 50. Like there's no player I would say is like 60%, 70% going to be a Laker or something like that. So like in the context of like reality, I think that's a fair number, and it's high enough, but not too high. So I would say maybe it's dropped like a little bit, but somewhere in that like 20 to 25% range. I would say. Personal one from Fang Charlie. Are you doing okay post fire? Is everything okay for you and the fam at Jovan? I appreciate you asking. Yes, everything's okay. Parents had to evacuate briefly, but they're back and fine. Everything was safe. Uncle had to evacuate, but he's back and fine and safe. We never had to evacuate. Did get about 3 miles from us, but was going to have to cross basically all buildings and houses, and that they put that fire out pretty quickly. So doing okay. I mean, I know people that have been affected. I know Rohan from the Lakers, their videographer, and that's a tough situation. His parents lost their house. I have a second barber because my first barber sometimes takes time off, and my second barber lost his house in Altadena. So it's just tough. And you know, you do what you can, you donate, you try to help out, but it's been a really horrible start to 2025 in LA. Bob the Builder, I would like Kessler if it is 1 first round pick. I agree. I think it's a no-brainer if it's 1 first round pick. I would even do a swap. I would even do a first round pick, a swap, and give up the top 4 protection. I would rather do all that than give up a second first round pick. But you know, technically with a swap, you're kind of giving up a first round pick, but I would keep the second first round pick and try to find a creative way to get him with only 1 first. Mr. TD, I would also do this. DK for Kessler. I've said that. I mean, DK and 1 first for Kessler, I would do. Fame net worths, love you cheating on your barber. So it's a weird situation because it's a barber in the same shop. So like my main barber knows he's off for 4 months. So I got to get my hair cut every 2 weeks. So he knows I'm going to the second barber, but it does get a little weird because then sometimes I'm getting my cut from my main barber and then I see the other barber, and it's almost like dating. It's kind of like, but it's your barber. It's kind of a weird situation. So don't recommend it, but I do need to get the haircut. Ali asking about Seawood. He's a figment of our imagination, I guess. L.A. we will end on this one. Percentages for big move, half measure, no move. Okay, so we'll start at the default, which is 33.3 for each one, because that's splitting it equally. I would say big move, I would put at about 15%. That leaves us with 85. I would say half measure at about 50%. And I would say no move at about 35%. So again, I would say big move 15%, half measure 50%. I mean, big move 15%, half measure 50%, and no move 35%. So I would like to see that slider go to no move 0%, and then big move 60%, half measure. I mean, I almost just say like, screw the half measure. What's the point? Like, just go all in, do the big move. But that is my current read on the situation. I will continue to update this with the streams and the episodes and continue to report this out over the next 2.5 weeks. But I am going to wrap here. I appreciate you all for watching and listening. As a reminder, I will be back tomorrow morning. We're going to record in the morning. It'll probably go up early afternoon because I'm probably going to go straight to practice post recording, and then I will edit it post practice and post it. So sometime like early afternoonish will be mid-season grades. I'm grading 12 or 13 of the 15 roster players, including the new guys, including DFS and Shake, also grading JJ. I will explain my rationale. I don't expect you all to agree with it, but we will get into it. So presenting Dan Wojcicki with the grades, and then he's giving me his reaction to them. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow morning. But that'll do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications so you never miss a post-game reaction or new episode of Buha's Block. And make sure you like this video if you haven't done so already, and comment if you have a question or a follow-up to something I said, you want to disagree. You want to tell me what I'm wrong about, let me know in the comment section. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download the episode, and leave a 5-star review if you want to, if you feel like it. A 4-star too, but prefer 5. Get into the woozy part of the night where I'm just kind of letting it fly and say whatever. So I really need to wrap here, but I appreciate you all. And I will talk to you tomorrow. And I will say we are getting close to 20,000 streams. So, subscribers. See, this is where I'm not making sense. 20,000 subscribers. And I cannot thank you all enough for subscribing and for supporting the channel and helping it grow. And we will be doing, if we get to 20K before the end of the week, which I think we will, I will be doing a special 20K subscriber stream on Friday. I was originally going to be an off day, but I will stream for you guys, for the people, because I appreciate you all, and it means the world to me. So Lakers, I will be traveling to San Francisco later in the evening, but I'll figure out probably late afternoon, early evening, doing some type of stream. But that will do it officially. I've ended the show like 3 times. I appreciate you all. Have a good night. Shout out to the Late Night Gang.